Alright, so in the aftermath of YCS Raleigh, it's time to talk about the best decks of the format. Like the video if you enjoy it, share your thoughts, of course, in the comments, and let's go ahead and get started. I think the first deck on today's list, or multiple decks I should say, is going to be a very obvious choice. It's Snake Eye variants. Of course, I decided to put this under one deck category so we can fit multiple decks on this list because you can pretty much play whichever fire variant you feel like. There's pros and cons to all of them. You can either play pure Snake Eye with Omega and Dispatted if you want. Some people even call Chet Synchron, although I'm not sure why you would do that. I think it's a really important part of the deck. You can also play the Kashtira package, which is just great. Fenrir Unicorn, the 3 Wraith Sauce, and of course Kashtira Birth, which is like, on an unrelated note, or maybe very related actually, kind of a ban-worthy card in my opinion. And you can also play Fire King Snake Eye. With the Fire King variant, I feel like it can be outed a little more easily than the Snake Eye one, but right now with people mixing things up and playing hand traps, board breakers, and, you know, a mix of all of them, you can't really know what to expect. So all in all, any kind of Snake Eye variant, which of course wasn't hindered by the ban list in any way, is going to be the dominant deck of the format, the best deck, the most consistent one, the most resilient one, and not the least bit fragile. Although sometimes you will open a weird hand, but it's not that likely, to be honest. So I think this just goes without saying. Anything fire is going to be the best deck right now. Moving on, I want to talk about Stun. Now, I'm not trying to rank anything on today's top 5 list. Fire decks are number 1 100%, but everything else is just really going to be dependent on your build, on the player, on the event you go to. But I had to talk about Stun. I feel terrible, giving it spotlight, but right now we have come to, I guess, a reality where Stun and deck out, Runic deck out, of course, is a viable deck. So however you feel about it, whatever your thoughts about it are, I think we have to admit that this is part of the format and actually part of the top decks. It's decking you out, it's playing floodgates, and some really annoying cards, like, Synchro Zone, obviously also a floodgate, you could say, and just stuff like Tyrant's Tirade and just very random old cards that get thrown into this strategy to just make your life a living hell, pretty much. But I guess with, fire decks performing, you kind of have to find a worthy contender, and just Stun, overall seems to be that. So again, however you feel about it, you can pick up Stun, you can play it, with Runic and just play like 2 Amano Ivato like you see on the deck list. You can also play Dyna and other monsters. You can switch things up and make it a little more interesting, but it's still going to be Stun regardless. So again, however you feel about it, this is a contender, and I did want to talk about it on today's list. Now, next up we have 2 decks, actually. I wanted both decks to share a spot because it's Kashtira and Flunder, and them being very similar in what they're trying to do, pretty much combat the format with Shifter and some of their own, slightly unfair cards. I figured it's fair to put them in the exact same spot on today's list, and again, I want to talk about multiple decks. You can play either of those. I do think both of them require some level of good technical play, and I honestly think so. Like, I totally get that a basic Flunder combo is just a basic Flunder combo. We all can do it with our eyes closed, pretty much. But when it comes to playing around things and actually trying to combat the format and react to what your opponent is doing, it's going to take some skill. And if you enjoy that and you still want to play a deck that, doesn't lose to some really annoying cards, but can actually play them, being Shifter, for example, this is definitely going to be, either of these decks are going to be a deck for you. Now with Kashtira, you obviously have your entire Heat Soul combo, which utilizes Link Spider, so nothing changed with your Heat Soul combo. When it comes to Fire Kings, with the loss of Link Kuribo, it's going to be much tougher. That's also why some people are deviating away from the Fire King variant, because you can just plus much more in card advantage if you're playing pure Snake Eye. But with Kashtira, you still have everything at your disposal and you can do whatever you want. And Flunder is just Flunder. So whichever of these two you pick, I think it's going to be a good, I guess, meta/anti-meta contender for this format. Now moving on. I wasn't entirely certain which decks I actually want to talk about because I do think there are some good contenders, but they didn't top in like major numbers, if you know what I'm talking about. So I guess next up we can talk about Branded. With Branded, it's a little weird because it seems to be a really good counter to the format, just has good matchups across the board, obviously can do the puppet lock, and with people moving to board breakers, it's going to be much easier to establish that. However, Branded can also be outed. That's a fact. And usually, from what I've seen, just looking at deck lists, listening to deck profiles, if people don't have a Branded out in the main deck, they are 100% siding quite heavily against Branded post-siding. So, in my opinion, the deck is extremely, extremely powerful, but it takes a lot of skill to pilot. So, in a tournament setting, obviously only the best Branded players are going to be able to do well. I still believe it's a deck that can teach you a lot. If you pick it up right now, obviously it's accessible. You do have to get Quem, but you had to get Quem also months back. So at this point, I think we have all come to the, realization that we're just going to have to pay for the Quem if we want to play Branded. There doesn't seem to be a reprint on the horizon, but that's besides the point, honestly. You can learn Branded, you can still do well with this deck, in my opinion, and it is a good contender right now. So with everything that it has going for it, the multiple layers of interruption, everything that Branded does, from Guardian Chimera to Dragostapelia, Mirror Jade, the gimmick Puppet Lock, just stopping and making some plays a little tougher to, go through with Sanctifier if you're not utilizing it for the lock. There's a lot that you're able to accomplish with this deck, so I definitely wanted to feature it on today's list. Now, as for the next deck, I want to talk about Pearly. I think Pearly, with it getting another Delicious Memory, that's actually quite a significant boost, because if you look at, the entire deck, everything it does is just so clean. It doesn't really lose to a lot of hand traps, especially now that the consistency is better, because almost always you're going to be able to open at least one more play to play through the hand traps. Not to mention that, again, people are deviating from hand traps, they're playing board breakers. But with Pearly, it's kind of sure, an evenly matched or something is going to hurt your card advantage. That's a fact. You want your Field Spell, My Friend Pearly, and all of that to still remain on the board to give you advantage once your monsters get removed. However, if you have already climbed to the Expertly Noir, you don't really care, because your opponent is just going to have to waste all of their resources trying to out your monster. And unless they're specifically playing cards like XYZ Encore or something like that, it's going to be really tough to do. There's obviously Underworld Goddess as well, but I'm not certain how many people are also utilizing that card. So with Pearly, not to mention that it has a lot of space for non-engine, it's just going to be a tough matchup every single time you encounter them. Not to mention the OTK potential, which is immense. And with Delicious Memory, it's going to be, again, a little bit easier, because right now the players have been doing the Happiness OTK, but with Delicious, it makes going first even easier to make Expertly Noir like it happened before. That's why they put it to 1. So, all in all, I think Pearly is a really nice contender, but again, it's going to take a skilled pilot to play it well. Now, we are not done yet. I wanted to talk about 2 other decks, actually. They didn't really make the list, but that's why I wanted to talk about them here in the honorable mentions part of the video. First up is Labyrinth. Obviously, it almost won the YCS. There was the ruling dispute, and if it got ruled in favor of the Labyrinth player, I think things could turn out a little differently. But yes, Labyrinth is still a contender. I feel like it's a little tough sometimes because a well-timed Ash or a Bell is just going to pretty much end your life. That's just what's up. And sometimes you open kind of awkwardly. You don't want to break on those transaction rollbacks and stuff like that. And the power level is not really, at the power of like pure Snake Eye. However, if you build it very consciously, if you really think about what you're doing, and also good technical play, all of those things are going to carry you, and you're going to be able to do well with Labyrinth. Another deck is Voiceless Voice. You may be surprised why I haven't talked about it at all. And honestly, it could go on the list right where Branded is, for example. You can also play Voiceless Voice Branded variants if you want. I just feel like I want to, give more spotlight to this deck post Legacy of Destruction once the support drops, which I think is going to make at least some difference. You have a new target for your Law, just placing a new continuous spell. You also have a new ritual. I'm not sure how many copies you're going to be playing of that. It's not the greatest monster. However, the deck in its entirety, I think, is nice. It's just that a lot of times it's going to brick, and you're not always going to open a hand that's going to be able to play through an interruption. Sometimes just, a well-timed targeting negation is going to end it for you, but there are ways of playing through that. And again, it's going to require some skill. This deck also got carried quite a lot, in my opinion, by Summon Limit. When it was still at 3, you were able to kind of win off the back of it if your combo didn't really go through, at least not in the entirety. And now things, of course, changed. However, I'm really not trying to knock Voiceless Voice. In my opinion, it is still a good contender, and the tops obviously proved that. People did do well with this deck, and again, you can play multiple different variants, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. Also the support, like I said. So yes, I do want to give props to all of the decks on today's list. All of them are nice. Snake Eyes is the best, but we already knew that pretty much. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know what you're going to be playing. And if you still feel like we're in a tier 0 format, or if things changed a little bit and you maybe have a feeling that there might be some worthy contenders, at least post Legacy of Destruction. So let me know everything that you think. I will gladly respond to your guys' comments and read them. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.